this, right? And it'll be, there we go.
Thank you, Joel, for putting in your contact information so we can get a hold of you. I'll definitely drop mine in there as well.
All right.
Allie, the people behind the scenes managing the chat box have all of our contact information, or should we as panelists put our own in?
No, you will need to put your own in on that, please. And
Thanks.
thank you. That's a really good question.
We can get started, Allie. I'm gonna start it now. I don't see anybody else in the waiting room. Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you all here to the first of its kind virtual event, What I Need to Know, Special Needs, Inclusion, and Ableism. It brings me great pleasure that the Broward County Council PTA/PTSA can host and assist with this amazing event. And we would not be here tonight if it were not primarily for the efforts of Allie Walford, the BCCPTA/PTSA Special Needs Chair, and Laura Howard, our Mental Health Committee Chair, and their teams work tirelessly to make this event a reality, and we cannot thank them enough. I would also like to welcome our school board member, Deborah Hickson, seat 9, County at Large. We so appreciate you being here, Debbie. And to our moderator for this evening, Joel Smith, and our 8 panelists, thank you all tremendously for taking the time out of your schedule to spend the evening with us discussing this very important topic. Some housekeeping items include that this event will be recorded and available for viewing at a later date, and that we will be giving away some door prizes at the end of the event at 8:30, and you will need to be present and respond if you're lucky enough to have your name drawn for one of our 4 prizes. We have 2 self-care baskets and 2 $25 gift cards from Target. Thank you all again for joining us here tonight. But before I turn it over to Allie, I would like to acknowledge a few of our distinguished guests joining us tonight. I'll begin with our Florida PTA President, Ms. Jen Martinez.
Hi, Bert. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's my honor to be here with you this evening. Thank you to everyone for joining us for this important, very important and relevant conversation. It is important that we always take notice and take the time on see ways that we can advocate for our special needs and be inclusive. I like how you added the word ableism in there to bring awareness to what that really means and the focus that we can bring to our own biases that we have on a daily basis and how we can expand those and reach out and be inclusive for all of our ESE students, remembering that that ESE realm covers a variety of our students that we are here for and we advocate every day for. So a shout out to Allie and Laura and to all of their teams that work to get this together, and to you, Bert, as the council president, for facilitating this very important panel. And thank you to all of the panelists and our moderator and our school board member for being here and being a part of this very important conversation.
Thank you, Madam President. I would also like to acknowledge Ms. Carolyn Nelson-Godert, our Florida PTA President-Elect.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's a really important topic, and I have no doubt that you will leave here better off than you started with great information. Thanks, Bert.
Thank you, Carolyn. I also see one of our business partners, Gerald Florney from Hazel Health. I appreciate you coming on. We also have one of our Alachua County Council Presidents on here as well, Mary Benedict. Thank you, Mary, for joining all the way from Alachua County. I'd like to now turn the mic over to Allie Walford, our BCCPTA Special Needs Committee Chair.
Thank you, Bert. Like we've said about 100 times already, my name's Allie Walford, and I'm a Broward girl. I may have been born in Indiana, but I moved to Broward in 1972. I went to to Tedder Elementary, Crystal Lake Middle School, and Deerfield Beach High School, as well as Broward College. So on the flyer, before I give the mic to Ms. Hickson to give us our opening remarks as the board member, I want to set the stage. Ableism is a topic that can create feelings. And I think when we have feelings created, sometimes we don't know what to process them with. So we were very intentional about the structure of our town hall tonight. And Joel is going to take over. And I told a friend of mine, I'm probably only going to get the first 7 minutes out. So, because everybody knows I love to talk, but I'll get my first 7 minutes out and then probably won't hear from me again. But ableism is the discrimination or prejudice against people who have disabilities. Ableism can take the form of ideas, assumptions, stereotypes, attitudes, practices, and physical barriers in the environment, or even larger scale oppression. It is often, and I would almost say always, unintentional. And most people are completely unaware of the impact of their words or their action. So what drives me in this work is, as our society has really grown with diversity, equity, and inclusion work, DEI, that ableism and disability is at the table with it also. So that was the germination of this. We're going to talk a little bit about inclusion and the history of the Individuals with Disabilities Act right at the beginning. And then we're just going to have this really great organic conversation. So Ms. Hickson, if you could give us our opening remarks before we turn the mic back over to Joel.
All right, thank you. And thank you so much for asking me to join you tonight, and for everyone for participating. I am Debbie Hickson, the countywide school board member, but more importantly, I am Corey's mom. I have a special needs son. He's 26, so recently aged out of the system. And also Tommy, who is not disabled. I'm his mom also. He's 29. So both of my sons are products of Broward County Public Schools, as am I. And you know, just really important. This is such an important topic. When Corey, I'll just tell you a quick personal story, and then I have a little thing to say about ableism. But when Corey was born, he was born missing the left side of his heart. And that's very scary. So besides the fact that he has intellectual disabilities, he has a true physical disability. And we were so scared to take him anywhere. We didn't want anyone to breathe on him. We were unsure what we were in for. And about probably 2 or 3 months into his life, and we were told that he probably wouldn't live to be very old. Chris and I looked at each other and we thought, well, if that's the case, and he's not going to live for very long, what kind of life is he going to have if we keep him locked up in the house all the time? So we made a conscious effort to give him every experience and every adventure that we possibly could. And we raised Tommy to not ever treat Corey like he was special. In fact, he would say to us, "You told me not to treat him like he was special," when we'd say, "Don't push him like that," or "Don't do something." So, you know, we lived it, but we also owned it. And we realized that it was so important for Corey to be able to do life on his own terms. And here he is 26, and I will tell you that he definitely lives life on his own terms. So what I want to also say is that there's no question that we live in an ableist world, right? Ableist is the idea that it's better to be non-disabled than it is to be disabled. It also examines disability discrimination on a systematic level by looking at the ways that our society designs physically and socially segregated systems. Most people are unaware, as Ali said, that they are being ableist, or even that ableism exists. So unless you're a person with a disability or closely connected to someone with a disability, you likely go about your business giving very little thought to how your actions, language, and attitudes may impact people with disabilities. Much of society's bend towards ableism stems from the medical model of disability, where we first come to understand what disability is, right? Something is wrong with this person, and that something needs to be fixed. This is how we're taught to think about disability. What we need to recognize really, though, is that just because something is different doesn't mean it's broken or it's wrong or bad. It's just different. So the language we use around disability can either support equality or perpetuate the stigma. So when we start to examine the way we talk about disability, we recognize the negativity that's built into our dialogue, whether it's outright derogatory or really inadvertently dismissive. So in most cases, individuals and organizations don't realize that they're contributing to marginalizing people with disabilities. So awareness, which is why we're here tonight, is the first step to creating positive change. As a society, we can't fix a problem until we acknowledge it exists and understand what created it. So tonight's town hall is a step in beginning to fix the problem of ableism in our community. Thank you again so much for joining us tonight.
Allie, I just want to acknowledge, I see one other person joined us, the Vice Mayor of Parkland, Bob Marison. Bob, welcome to this town hall. Go ahead, Allie.
Well, actually, it's Joel. Joel
And
is
I'm
our
ready to go.
moderator, and he's going to keep everybody on point and on task, because you would be surprised how quick 2 hours can go.
And I want to thank everyone for participating tonight. As I've done several of these in the past, I've done them from a point of view of having some history and skill set in the arc of wellness arena and the mental health arena. But in the world of neurodiversity and physical diversity and special needs, I'm still a novice. So I'm excited about the panel we have assembled tonight. What I'm going to do is introduce them to you one each and ask them to make some few brief comments on, without blushing, why they've been asked to do this and what their area of expertise is. And then we'll dive right into the questions. We've heard from Allie a little bit, so I'm going to skip her at the moment and go to Lisa.
Thank you, Joel, and welcome everyone to this groundbreaking event, and I'm very proud to be a part of it. So my name is Lisa Math. I'm the director of the Family Star program for Family Network on Disabilities. We are a state-run agency, and I work to support families that have any type of loved ones that are birthed to age 26 with complex medical conditions, special healthcare needs, developmental disabilities, or mental health challenges. So it's a broad spectrum of disabilities that I work with, and the families that I support and the providers that I support as well, and training them to understand how to engage those families. I'm also a certified recovery peer specialist. I have an endorsement in working with families. It's an important certification that I'm proud of. It allows me to use the professional training that I have along with the lived experience that I have as a parent, which I'll share with you in just a moment. And that training is what really sets us apart by offering that peer support and that mentality of been in those shoes. I'm going to help you walk this journey. As well as I mentioned, I'm a parent. I'm a parent of an almost 24-year-old young adult who has enabled me to get the experiences I need through my child's journey of navigating the school system, the medical system, and the mental health system through my child's journey of medical conditions and mental health conditions. I'm very excited to use that and to share my knowledge and experience and hope and trainings with all of you tonight.
Thank you, Lisa. And there already have been comments about my t-shirt. I think we need to respect each and every individual that we deal with, both ourselves and our kids, and we need to break and destroy stigma. Let's go right to Damian, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Damian Hunt. I'm the I'm regional school liaison for Kaiser University Multidisciplinary Center, one of 6 discretionary funded programs. And basically, I was asked to be a part of this because I actually developed a mentoring component for a Department of Education grant that Kaiser University housed. I developed it, I service it, and I make sure it's implemented. And I also train professionals, and I also share and help coordinate things with parents in dealing with their student with disabilities. And I've been doing that for over 20+ years.
Thank you. And the real reason Damian was asked to join is so I wouldn't be the only bald guy in the room, regardless of his expertise. Simone?
Everyone. Thank you, Joel. Simone Hollingsworth, Executive Director of the Exceptional Student Learning Support Division here in Broward County for the public school system. I have several staff members on as well. Have been in the district for 25+ years, doing a variety of different roles. Honored to be here this evening to be part of such an esteemed panel. Thank you.
So you started when you were 12, correct?
Thank you. Yes, Joel, I like that. And yes, if you, Diane just dropped a link in the chat too, if you have any specific, requests and needs to please complete that so that we can then have staff follow up with you. But yes, I was 12. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you. And please, please, people, don't be shy. Put your questions in the chat so we can try and capture them. Gail, let's go to you, please.
Thank you. My name is Gail Moore, and I am the Community Relations Specialist with 211 Broward. A large part of my work is making sure people know about the benefits, services, and resources available through 211 Broward, and they know where to go when they're in need. Too often people go without resources because they don't know that something exists, or maybe they are concerned about, they don't quite feel confident asking somebody or something else for help. Well, when you don't know the number to call, you call 211. Our counselors are there 24/7, empathetic with not just crisis counseling, but connections to those services that we all need at some point in our life. We don't live where we're completely independent 100% of our lives. So we're going to need help. And that way, don't get frustrated calling a million places. Call 211 and we'll link you to one of these fabulous agencies here available. Or if you need other resources, we'll connect you there. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you, Gail. And let's go over to Jackie, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jackie Luskin. I'm the current chair of Broward Exceptional Student Education Advisory Council. I'm going to be talking a little later about what that actually is, what we do, and some of our work. But just a little about me. I'm a mom of two. I have one child who's on the spectrum, and I fell into the world of ESE advocacy just by turning up at an ESE advisory council and being asked to take notes one night, and here I am now. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for putting this together, particularly you, Ali. You've done so much work on it. It's a really important conversation. I also think the fact that it's recorded gives it so much more reach just beyond those who are here tonight. So it's kind of a self-perpetuating. So thank you very much, and I'll talk more later.
Thank you. And I'd just like to stop now and just listen to your accent.
I can get away with anything with this accent, right?
Really? Barbara. You're muted, Barb.
Well, I'm so glad to be the first person to be muted today. Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad to be part of this panel. I'm Barbara Krakauer, and I'm one of two Florida Inclusion Network facilitators that serve in Broward County. FIN, which you might have had a chance to look at earlier when Ali and Gail were sharing different resources, is a discretionary project through the Department of Ed, and we serve the district and schools and families to promote opportunities for students with disabilities to thrive in general education environments. So that's our focus, and happy to talk more later.
Thank you. And certainly not least, but last for the moment, Stacy.
Hey, everybody. It's so good to have everybody come on tonight to listen to this super important topic. My name is Stacy Hoagland. Around 30 years ago, I actually worked for Broward County Schools. But as of today, I am an advocate with Family Network on Disabilities of Broward County. I am the president of the Autism Society of Florida, and I am the statewide coordinator of a program called Partners in Policymaking. And the very core of that program is inclusion in our schools, our community, and employment. So it is with great honor and privilege that I am here tonight.
Thank you so much. So you can see, everybody, what a tremendously well-rounded and knowledgeable panel we have. So we're gonna dive right into some questions. I'm gonna have just a brief preliminary comment to say thank you to Bert Miller and Broward County PTA for facilitating all of these town hall meetings, but seeing the particular value in this one. We wanna make sure that the voices of parents that don't often get heard in the larger meetings is heard. So this is a great effort. And Laura, who facilitates a lot of herds us together to pull these things together. But most of all, in this particular one, to Allie Walford, who wouldn't take no for an answer, who would not allow us to get off track, who gave us a script, whether we follow it or not. And we're going to jump right in, Allie, with the first question for you. And really, for novices such as me, it's such an important baseline question. What does IDEA say about inclusion? You're muted, my dear. I'm shocked that you don't know that.
You know what? I have like a channel 7 setup over here, and I'm afraid to move anything because I will lose everything. But I didn't want Barbara to be the only one muted. IDEA it's a federal statute. It's not an idea. It's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And it was first, and then Stacy probably will remember the number, but I always forget. Public Law 1-something-42.
192.
Yeah, I knew you guys would know it. So it was originally that, but it wasn't until 1975. 1975. It was only 10 years after the Civil Rights Act. So that's the first thing. But IDEA, or Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, it doesn't say anything about inclusion. It's very quiet about inclusion. Now, it does talk about a concept called LRE, least restrictive environment, and the very specific language is to maximum extent appropriate. Now, what are you going to do with that kind of language, right? 67 counties in Florida, each 67 county is going to look at that a little bit differently. But Barbara, I think, is going to talk a little bit more how Florida has more of a specific thought on that. But I had a thought about this, and then I'm going to actually be quiet, which is unusual for me. You cannot talk about inclusion without talking about ableism, because you know what? Inclusion is hard. It is not easy. The teachers, the schools, the districts, the families, they are not given enough resources and support to do what they need to do to have their children appropriately included. So we got to work at it, you know. So I look as inclusion and ableism as one coin, and ableism being the ugly underside of the coin, but it contributes to reminding us the work and intention that inclusion takes. And just by talking about it tonight, just by making people aware of the biases that they may not even be aware that they have. The other point, and Soren's going to put it in the box for you, is Rights Law has done a tremendous amount of work on specifically inclusion and least restrictive environment. So she's going to pop that link in there for Rights Law and for an EDA, a Department of Education site. And we specifically, the reason I wouldn't take no for an answer is October is Disability History Awareness Weeks. And if I'm not mistaken, I do believe it's one of our very own community members and his son made that happen in Florida. So I'm not 1000% correct on that, so I'm not going to say any names, but it comes from grassroots work like this. So that's why I just was a dog with a bone with this one, Joel.
Thank you, Alec. And before we jump into the next question, since this is the foundational kind of a comment, do any of the other panelists want to embellish it with a brief but pointed comment?
I will.
Stacy, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just what, where Ali was kind of talking about, the ableism and inclusion. If we had true inclusion, we would hit ableism in a really big way. Because what creates ableism is segregation. And so if we could just get a little bit better at that, we will just normally and really just systemically be able to affect the negative with positive.
So that's kind of a mic drop kind of a comment. Just repeat it one more time, because I think that's a foundational statement.
Well, with most things that as society that we kind of, we say we don't like, or we want to put it over there, most of the time it's rooted in fear. And we become fearful over things when we don't have exposure to it. We don't understand it. We don't understand other humans, and it doesn't really matter how they're different from us. And so by including our students, because you know what, our kids in our schools, all kids,
they're our future leaders. They're the people who are going to be taking care of me when I'm old, when I'm ready to retire. And so these are our future leaders. So we really want them to be around all students, no matter their diverse background, so that they're ready to lead all people when they're adults. But they can't do that if they don't do school with them, because they won't know them. They'll have a fear of them because they're not really sure what to do or what to say. So, but when we include students, and I'm not just talking about putting all students in the same room, inclusion means support systems and learning about each other and making sure that everybody has what they need. And when we do that and we do it well, that's when we really negatively hit ableism and create a better future for our society.
Wow. Thank you. I mean, for someone who's not as informed, that you couldn't make it clearer than the way you did. So building on what Ali said, that's really very helpful. But it points us to education. We say students, we say where kids come together. So I'd like to turn it over to Simone and her team. I'm sure she's got a support team there. What does FLDOE say about inclusion? What are you governed by, and how do you try and make that work for our kids?
Correct. And thanks, Joel. And I couldn't have, Stacy hit it out of the park, like you mentioned, really with that organic conversation, because students with disabilities are all students first, and really truly for us to make sure that every student has and is able to be as functionally independent and as successful as possible, we have to set that high expectation, set the bar high, and really truly look at every student as the ability of what they bring to the table versus what is a disability. And as Ali mentioned, IDA doesn't address inclusion. However, Florida statutes do use the term inclusion to mean that the student is receiving education in a general education regular class setting, reflecting, and this is our formal definition, natural proportions and age appropriate heterogeneous groups in core academic, elective, or special areas within the community. And really truly our job is to support our students, like Stacy mentioned, giving them all supports that are necessary for them to be successful, to wrap around those services, instructional and best practices, and making sure that our supports are tailored to those students' their specific needs on, based on current research. So as we evolve and delve into new information, really adjusting our practices. So that's really where our division comes in to help support schools, support families, support teachers and staff, and really helping that education, that collaboration, that communication piece. And in Broward, we have 81% of our students spending their day in the general education classroom. The target from the Florida DOE is 85% of our students spending 80% of the day in general education classroom. So we're over the 80% mark. We know we want to get to the 85 or higher. It's certainly something, as we look at information and we look at our students, making sure that we're really exposing them to that general education setting and making sure they have the appropriate supports and have the appropriate, aids that they need. And truly at the end of the day, really looking at what we need to do for our students is always set that bar high and expect those high expectations, ensuring that they have access to that general education curriculum to the maximum extent possible, and making sure, like I said, they're getting what they need with those appropriate aids and services. So, that's the technical terms, as well as really truly, what do we do with that as we're, engaging with our students, and yes, in the educational setting, but also looking at them past those four walls of the classroom and really looking to see, because they're 3 1 minute and the next thing they know, like Ms. Hickson said, they're 26, and really what are we doing to make sure that the Coreys are living their own life and doing that to the maximum extent possible independently.
Thank you, Simone. You had said that we were at a rate of 81% with a target of 85%. What's your feeling about, and I understand you always want to be more than that, but what's your feeling about where Broward ranks in terms of some of our neighbors or other communities?
We're right there with them, certainly always making sure, and Barbara can also discuss that too when she's coming on with regards to how Finn helps that. We're always marking ourselves against our larger, districts within the the state and making sure that we're sharing best practices and seeing exactly what they're doing. We just actually had Orlando in our neck of the woods last week, which was a great opportunity for us to share best practices and really look to see what are we doing and how can we earmark things with other districts. So, you know, that's, I think, how we continue to grow and develop and also help our schools, you know, become better.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm going to go change the dynamic a little bit and flip over to Jackie, because you have an organization that listens to the voice of the parents. And, you know, we're not competing, we're building together. But what are you hearing? What are the parents saying about what we're doing and what we need to do?
Well, yes, and not only do we listen to the voice of the parents, but we are the voice of the parents. We're a parent-driven body, so we've, you know, been there, done that. We live deeply embedded in the ESE community. I think what parents don't want to see is inclusion boiled down only to statistics. So when the Department of Education sets that figure, you know, that 85% of students with disabilities to spend more than 80% of their day in a general education setting, great on paper, but what does that mean? I think nobody likes to talk about inclusion without the word meaningful in front of it. There has to be meaningful inclusion. We don't want our kids called the ESE kids. We don't want planning of the school day and school systems, you know, like, well, what should we do? And then what should we do for the ESE kids? I think, as Simone put it well, you know, they are kids first, and then you build on the framework around them that they need to give them supports and services. The segregation, where are their ESE classrooms situated? How much of their day are they actually spending with their peers, not just in a specific facility, but with their peers and engaging and interacting and treated with equity? And are their classroom standards being followed? Our ESE, our autism committee, did a lot of good work on that a few years ago. So I think it's that word meaningful that needs to come before inclusion that we want to hear.
Thank you. I think that's an important comment. And I think we should all note the word meaningful. I see just a comment in the chat, which reinforces what Jackie said. Segregation and discrimination in our public schools is not inclusion. So I think we need to, you know, to be cognizant of that. Before we get to Barbara, I want to go over to Damian for just a minute, because he's got those kids at the cusp of aging out of the one system and into the other system. And the same thing, how does IDEA apply to secondary and to the work you're doing?
Well, basically, I just like you said, Joel, I have an opportunity to meet with the middle school and high schools kids. And basically, my role is to start to try to develop a transition plan for when they get ready to leave high school and into the real work environment. And one of the things that that I believe that IDEA is really trying to make sure they get a handle on is making sure that it's not just this buzzword. Within ESE, we know we use a lot of buzzwords. Okay, we use a lot of words that sound, that sound colorful and it sounds beautiful. But to go back to what Jackie said, if it doesn't mean anything, then you just said a bunch of words and you're rambling. So my thing is, as a mentor, I get an opportunity to develop a plan, see what the young person wants to be in life, in real life, and really try to get their goals matching up with their abilities. I don't really focus on the disability. Okay, we know, and I'm a person that tries to make sure that they empower themselves. You have a disability. The disability doesn't have you. So we need to understand that and to teach that they grasp that concept. Also, the IDEA also helps, for young people to feel empowered when it's time to go look for that job, that they feel free to say, listen, I have a disability. That does not mean I can't do your job. And I make sure that that's the type of conversation that I'm having with the young people, with teachers, and most important, with parents, to let them know your young person can do things. Take the handcuffs off and allow your kid to be, a young person and do those things that you're afraid for them to do. And that's, that's the role that I try to take.
So as a naive person, let me ask you what may be a pointed question.
Yes, sir.
Little Joel comes into your environment out of either a public or a private environment, but with some neurodiversity, with some unique packaging. Am I ready? Are we doing what, are you seeing kids ready to take that next step where they feel empowered to be the best they can be?
It depends upon what program they're coming out of, to be honest with you, because unfortunately, all programs are not created equal. So one school may be doing a bang up job, another school, not so much. So to be honest, it's a reach to say that all kids would be ready, but I will say that if they come to, they actually have a particular program and they are, let's say, you know, part of the Broward PTA or PTSA, and they are going through the proper channels. They have the job coach, they have a phenomenal ESE specialist, they have people in place. For the most part, I would say that 8 out of 10 times, they're definitely ready. They are 100% ready because they're making sure that they're going and they're getting hands-on experience and actually being empowered by the program that they're coming from.
Well, I guess that's great to hear. And I think the good news is that we can congratulate Simone and team for building that model. And the challenging news is we need to look at the other 20% and find out how to bring them up so that those kids are as ready. Barbara, I think your network plays a big role in this, and I think it's a perfect segue to come to you.
Thanks, Joel. One of the things that we try to provide through the Florida Inclusion Network are resources. And for families, we have tip sheets that look at what does an inclusive school look like? What does an inclusive classroom look like? Sometimes we're not sure how to really conceptualize that. What does it look like and feel like? Communication tips for having positive and effective communication with your school team to try to empower parents in that process. And we also provide information on the value of inclusion for students. Sometimes it's parents who are reticent about that and are concerned that their child, maybe they won't fit in. So we want to make sure that we really encourage and share the importance of the value of that. As it has been said already, kids with disabilities are general education students first, and they need to have access to the general education environment to really thrive. From a school standpoint, we do a lot of professional learning. We want to raise the game for our teachers and educators, whether it's teaching strategies that look at universal design for learning or differentiated instruction, high leverage practices for special educators, how to deliver the accommodations that kids who have IEPs are entitled to. So we kind of look at how can we support our teachers for that. One of the things that we do that I think is really helpful is the practice of how to schedule support in a school. So we'll work with school teams to look at their scheduling process so that we can make sure that those supports can be provided to kids where they're learning, and then have a master schedule that can align to that and make it happen. We've been able to start programs at 3 of our high schools in peers as partners in learning. And we're very proud of that. We'd love to clone it to every single school, but it hasn't happened just yet. It's an opportunity for students who are enrolled in the course to learn to be service leaders. And through that process, they're going to learn a lot about disability, civil rights, discrimination, and how to help kids who learn differently. That prepares them to then serve in gen ed classrooms and be a support to kids who do have disabilities and some of their friends in that classroom. And we've had great outcomes from it. We hope to have a few more schools sign on during second semester and then grow it as we go forward next year. Ali was talking about LRE, or least restrictive environment, which is really the crux of what Finn looks at, because where kids are educated is very important to prepare them for the future. So Finn does a lot of data reviews with the district and with schools to see how can we set some targets and make some change. But I think a from a kind of a systematic standpoint, our biggest project this year will be looking at best practices for inclusive education assessments. And these are self-assessments. We have over 250 of our schools that will be conducting their self-assessment, looking at 34 indicators of best practice for inclusion. And through that assessment process, they will set an annual action plan. Parents are invited to be part of this team, and having that team approach really brings a lot of stakeholders together to kind of look at what's working, what's not, what could we improve. The annual plan that then takes a closer dive at which indicators should we be better at, what should we do and how will we measure that, gets addressed on an annual basis. And then schools include their BPI assessment and their annual plan in their school improvement plan. So we're very excited to be part of that process and facilitate the training to those who will lead it at their schools.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you help to hold really the district and the individual schools to a higher standard about services for our neurodiverse kids, because you have the expertise to share with them what those standards are and how to reach those upper levels. Does that make sense?
We certainly hope so. I mean, we work together with some of our other discretionary project partners and our partners within the district, but it is about pushing the point about the benefits of inclusion, and that if we don't do it, children are never ready. You know, it's not about an old way of thinking of when will this student be ready to enter gen ed. It's sort of how can we think outside the box and structure learning environments that can meet the needs of our learners. So it takes that village to make it happen.
So you mentioned the peer support or peer-to-peer kind of program, which is something I can be much more cognizant and familiar with from the other worlds that I'm involved with. But you mentioned that we only have 3 schools so far that have embraced that. And of course, that raises a flag to me without throwing anybody under the bus. How do we support that, and what do we do in your estimation?
Well, it raises a flag for me too. I would love to see it really flourish in our district. It is a statewide course, just to explain it a bit more to our folks who are participating tonight. It is an elective course for secondary students. Recently, it also became a course in middle school. And so we have worked diligently over the years to present to our school leaders, principals and assistant principals, to guidance counselors, to schedulers, to get the course on their course list and to promote it alongside of other courses that kids could sign on for. We know that it would be a great solution to not just provide a social club, which is lovely and great, and we certainly encourage schools to include students with disabilities in all clubs on their site, but this is an opportunity for students, usually without disabilities, to be a partner in a math class or a science class and help a student who might struggle with the academic load get by and provide that in the moment support. So, so we're going to keep pushing it.
Right. And if I could, Joel, just to chime in too, Barbara always does a wonderful job of defining and explaining things. And she mentioned the peer pals, or not the peer pals, but the the elective class versus the peer pals or a mentoring program. And that is an expectation at each school, at each level, that there is a mentoring program. The peer pals itself is an exact organization, so it might not be called that, but there is an expectation that peer mentoring is happening at each site and for our students that are in those schools, so that they do have positive role models. So I just wanted to also address that, but thank you, Barbara, for always sharing such clear and thorough information.
So
And
Simone,
Jill, I
my
had a
question to
quick
you,
point too.
hold on one second. My question to you, Simone, is there's an expectation. Do we know that it's happening?
That was when I was a part of the OSPA family as a cadre director, that was definitely something that was in play, that we were verifying that every school had a peer mentoring program. Again, it wasn't necessarily always called through the Peer Pals program. However, I do know that during the pandemic, having mentoring programs was a little bit challenging. I would assume that the expectation, again, and I can follow up with Dr. Wanta, is that still in play now that we are back in with a air quote, what our normal opening is yet again.
Please. So we have a number of other questions, but I'd like to, we're doing, I think, really well on timing. I think we have panelists that are biting at the bit to make some quick comments. So I'd like to do a quick round robin, starting with Allie, to see if you have anything you want to add.
I do. I just had one really quick thing, because my vision for this event was that it was parents of non-disabled children. And we don't know who's in the audience, right? I did not enjoy any of the PTAs I belonged to until my youngest son got to high school. I had very bad experiences because of a lack of inclusion. And that may not be real popular to say right now. And Bert, I hope you don't smack my hand later, but that was my intent for this. So some strategies that I did, and what changed the curve was I got on those Gen Ed initiatives. I tried to become the ESE chair. I was voted down like 6 times in a row, not even lying. But I became the Central Area Chair that year. And then I became part of our district area advisory. So it's like that, you know, elementary school, if you can't go around it, go over it. If you can't go through it, go under it. I was kind of subversive, and I went through the Gen Ed way, and I made sure the topics about disability were always talked about. And I think if those of you that are here that do not have children, and you go and you sit on your SAC, your school advisory council, and you look at that SIP, and does your school improvement plan really have an equity plan in it? And does the equity plan really have a disability component in it? Like, there's real tangible things that parents can do, and I'm done. But I had to say that.
No, I want you to say it. I want to make sure we cover everything. Debbie, I'm going to come to you because I have a question for you, but let me do the round robin and then come to you if that's okay. Lisa.
Thanks, Joel. So I just have to start with, wow. I am listening to some amazing information. I hope those of you that are in the audience are really taking a lot of concrete information away from this. We are talking about really understanding that ableism is a part of our lives. And as I'm listening to this, and I'm thinking about some of the questions, the fact that we're having to ask these questions talks straight to the concept of ableism. And so we are accepting of the fact that it is a part of our lives. The question is, what can we do to change it? Allie made a great suggestion a moment ago, just to say, you've got to be the catalyst for the change, even if you don't have a child with a disability, because that conversation about ableism is not about disabilities. It's about the people who don't have the disabilities having to understand the other world. And so we need to make sure that we're all in this together. This is not a they versus them conversation. This is an integrated concept. Ableism does not exist. And Stacy, you put it beautifully. Ableism does not exist in a vacuum. And so we have to understand that if we're not integrating everything about disability, inclusion, ableism in every conversation, we're doing ourselves a disservice.
Thank you, Lisa. Jackie, anything quick you want to add?
Thank you. Yes, I do. And just following on from what Lisa said, really, yeah, ableism isn't necessarily a conspiracy. I know, you know, it's ignorance. Sometimes it's maybe just lack of thought. Sometimes we've got to be able to distinguish, I think, between deliberate discrimination and unconscious ableism, and then identify ways of getting in there and turning the tide on that. But also, just to go back to Barbara's mention of the Peers as Partners in Learning program, it's appalling that there are only 3 high schools in the whole of Broward County that have taken up that course. That's something certainly I'd like to drive more traffic to. And I think every high school principal, I hope, can look at that program and look into what it is and get it back on, get it in their classrooms next year, because that's a wasted resource if there's only 3 there. And again, that's where parents help, parents and PTSAs, and go to your SAC meetings and advocate for that, because parents are the customers, and they have the leverage, and there is respectful advocacy to be done on issues like that.
Thank you. Gail, anything that you've heard that you want to comment on?
Oh my goodness, this panel is so full of rich information. I am learning. I am taking notes. I can't comment. I just, you know, when I think about ableism, I think about inclusion, I think about Ryan White. And I don't know how many people out there remember who Ryan White was, but in the 80s, he was diagnosed with HIV. He was in school, and his school said, you can't come back here. And it was absolutely what Jackie said. It was born of ignorance, because they, people didn't know as much about HIV, and they thought, oh my goodness, what's going to happen to the children? And so I think a lot of times that statement is used, what's going to happen to the children, when instead it should be, I don't know anything about this. And instead of learning, I'll just say it's dangerous for the children. And now, if you would have no idea, the serostatus of the children that go to school with your children, with your students, or anything like that, and it's not anyone's business, but it would be. We all know that is not a method. You're not going to worry about transmission with going to class. And it's the same way, where people see something they don't understand and they think, well, I better put that over there. Their classes should be at the end of the hall or in the portables. We want to make sure we separate them. And when you separate them, you label them. And when you label them, it's much easier to start dismissing, and actually exactly what Joel said, add that stigma, because those students are over there and they deserve, and you are teaching children, you know what? We shouldn't be around these students because there's something different about them. So that's just, I really appreciate all of those comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Damian, any quick wrap up on this portion that you wanted to add?
I would say, for the most part, those parents that do have, a student with disability, and I'm going to say something that may sound unpopular, so keep them back, Joel.
We bald guys can stick together.
Okay, good. So what I'm going to say is that parents that do have, a student with disability, first of all, make sure you're showing up to these IEP meetings. Make sure you're doing your part, because the truth of the matter is you're your child's biggest advocate. Okay, along with the child. Those that may not have a person, that they have experience in dealing with a student with disability or what have you, make sure that you're the parent that teaches your child to be sensitive to what's going on. Okay, to be more of an advocate for a person. Don't be the one, and you're the adult child and you're making fun and you're teaching your child how to make fun of someone. That's what I really have to say. So I'll wrap it up with that. Thank you.
And by the way, parents who aren't comfortable or feel secure being an A1 advocate, not that they're not an A1 advocate, but how to express it, there are resources to navigate with them to do that work. Barbara, any comment?
I want to make a quick comment. I want to make just a comment related to what I heard, from you guys over the last few minutes. One thing is, like, where we were hearing about, getting ready. It's not about the student getting ready. The student is who they are. It's about the staff and the support systems getting ready, because inclusion is not easy. And anybody who's on here who's a teacher will be able to tell you that for sure. And especially good inclusion is not easy. And the other thing I wanted us just to kind of put in a little caution box, or like I hear some people referring to them as, peers programs or pals or stuff. Inclusion's not a program. It's not a program. It's giving kids a sense of belonging. It should happen 24/7 and not just inside this nice little compartmentalized box that we put over there and we do from 1:30 to 2 o'clock every day. And get the kids together and feels good, makes everybody feel good and pats himself on the back saying, well, we did inclusion today. That's not inclusion. And it doesn't create more acceptance or interest of typical peers for the kids that are in their class with disabilities. To the contrary, it could actually have a negative impact. So we have to be very careful of that. And that's one of the reasons that I kind of like the peers as partners, because if you guys want to just delve a little bit into it, anybody who's out there listening, you can, Finn has a video up. You can kind of take a look at it. It is really developing wraparound supports by their peers through the course of an entire day. So as they live on school campus, inclusion is happening all the time. And the supports that the student receives are by their peers and not by some nice lady who wants to take them by the hand or pat them on the head, which happens if you don't know.
Which is the ableism we're talking about. Thank you. Barbara, I guess that's a quick segue right to you.
Well, yeah, I'm so glad about what Stacy was just saying. It's so true. Most of us learn best from one another, from the folks we feel comfortable with. And when you have a teenager just turn to another and say, "Hey, man, this is what a fraction is. Let me show you about that," or "This is how to be cool in this class." That is organic and natural, and those are the natural supports that means so much. While our program here in Broward is small, and I am with all of you that I'd love to see it grow exponentially as this year goes on and next year. Certainly where it is in place, we are getting such positive responses from students, from teachers. It's a great start, but that is the intention, that you can provide supports. And this isn't IEP stuff. This is just human support in a classroom from a peer. The kids are often those who, "Oh, well, I had Mr. Smith a couple years ago and I got an A in his class. So if I'm your pal in that class, you're lucky. You know, we're going to do this together." And the content area teachers really appreciate having the student to provide support to the student on their caseload. You know, so it's definitely a win-win, and we hope to see it grow. Thank you for posting the link to Peers as Partners in Learning on the Finn website. There are some great videos that'll tell you more from the point of view of students, school administrators, and parents.
So thank you. Debbie, as not only an advocate and a lived experience person, but you've heard all of these comments. As a school board member, we all think you have magical powers and a magic wand. In reality, you don't. But please share with us what you've heard so far and what it is you'd like to embellish.
So lots of great information. I was not aware of the Peers as Partners in Learning, and it sounds like a phenomenal program, and I will definitely try to see how we push it, you know, get more schools to participate. I think it's absolutely a great program. Corey participated a lot, and I had to fight actually for him to be able to be in the aftercare program at Olson. Chris and I had to do it. They wanted to separate them and put them in a special class, and we were like, no, this is the one place where it's a level field, and he learns how to behave properly by the regular ed students, and the regular ed students learn compassion and patience. And, you know, it was really important for us. So I know that it's important. There's not always places where was appropriate for Corey to be in a regular classroom because he wasn't quite to that level, but at least in the aftercare program, it seems so silly. So I think peer mentoring is really important, and both sets of students learn so very much from it. He had friends that would come over and play basketball. They had play dates from the aftercare program, and you know, he was just Corey. But I do want to give just a little bit of kudos to the state of Florida and really our district. I have friends that have students with special needs that live in various areas in the country, and they don't provide half of the things that we provide here in Broward County. So I just, I know we can always do better, but I just want to put that into the context that we are able, like the peers as partners, there are some states that wouldn't even give that, you know, a second thought. So I think we should, I've always felt very blessed that we live in Broward County and that Corey had the opportunities and the experiences that he had. Same for Tommy. You know, when we're talking about ableism, our students, we should meet them all where they are, right? And provide services to every single student because they're all special in a different way. But I am happy to be on the board where I can give some louder voice to why this is important. And I appreciate the information that's being shared here. I'm taking notes so that I can, you know, amplify your voices and try to make sure that along with the district that we're encouraging, you know, maybe it's just that they're not aware of it. We make assumptions that they just don't want it, but I think there's so many things going on and it just needs to be a gentle reminder and providing. Earlier today, the 211 website, you know, it was a one-stop shop place. I said, this is what I've been asking for so many years as a parent of special needs. And that's really, I think there's so much, it's hard to encompass all of it. So I really do think that we just have to keep pushing it out there and providing the information and letting them figure out, you know, what works in each different situation.
Thank you. And that leads me to a comment and then back to you for your thoughts on something. So as a person being involved in a number of systems in Broward County, I know, and many of us know, that we are considered to be resource rich, that we do have a lot of services in our community over a wide range of life needs, emotional needs, and so forth. But when you're facing the need yourself or in your family, that knowledge flies out the window when you're in crisis or you're stressed or you're having to deal with the behavior that's right in front of you. So in your opinion, looking at the seat you're in now and your experience, how do we ensure that people who have a unique child are at the table when those decisions are made about where they're going to fit and how they're going to be allowed to flower?
So, well, actually, when I did that, it wasn't so much the parents of the students, but more the students. I think as parents, so I look at this couple of different ways. We have to teach our students to be good advocates for themselves. And that starts at home, right? So you start to give them the ability to make decisions at home. What do you want for dinner? What time should your bedtime be? What are you going to wear? Because I think even as parents, it was really hard for me to realize that Corey could do so much more than I gave him credit for. And Tommy reminded me of that all the time. Mom, you know, so what if he's not matching? He's okay with it. Why do you care? So, you know, I think as parents, we have to teach our children young and at home all the time that they are allowed to make decisions for themselves. And then that moves up the ladder because then they'll start to demand that they have a seat at the table as they move through life in different situations. So with their parent in conjunction with them at an IEP meeting, it should be the student who gets the opportunity to say, what do you want your goals to be? And the parent can add to it or, you know, engulf that. But the more we do as parents for our kids, we're also propagating the idea that they can't do it because we jump in and do it for them. So I think it's really important for us as parents and then as teachers and then as employers and, you know, as we move through that process to ask our students, our children, our students, our employees, what do you need? What can we do to help you? How do we make this a better work experience for everyone? When I was a teacher and South Broward, I was so lucky for 1 year to have a co-teacher who was an ESE specialist. And she was in there, it was a pilot program, and she helped me to make worksheets and things that were good for not just my special needs or ESE students that were in my classroom, but everybody benefited from that. So I think whenever you're having decision-making processes, that inclusion should, we think, well, we should have a male and we should have a female and we should have someone of color and we should have some Muslim. And, we look at equity and inclusion that way, but you also have to include someone that has a different abilities to say, you don't think about it. We think of elevators, but we don't think of ramps. We put stairs in buildings, but we don't automatically think, how does someone in a wheelchair? So it doesn't always have to be an intellectual disability, but my answer to that may be not exactly what you were thinking, but I think it's so very important that we teach our children as they move up through life to be their own best advocates. And whether it's in sign language or writing it on a piece of paper or, saying it loudly, we have to always give them options and be able to express to us what their needs are, because we make assumptions that may not be true for them.
I think you said something remarkable for me, and in our conversation about ableism, that maybe we need to do a lot of work on parents, because as parents, we want to protect our kids. And sometimes that means covering for them or not pushing them. So, as Allie has brought us into this world of ableism, we need to make sure that I may be sensitive to it in my group with my kids. Then the kid goes home to the parent who is more coddling or more protective. And so I think that was a remarkable thing to be aware of. Somebody, I think, wanted to chime in. Who was Lisa? Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So Debbie made a point, and I want to expand on it a little bit, that I think is a real aha moment for a lot of people. So many of the discoveries or inventions that are made to accommodate individuals with special needs or challenges or disabilities have actually benefited all of the population. It is not always something that is just specifically helping that community that it was designed for. For example, and I'll never forget when somebody pointed this out to me, how many of us go to a door handle and think twice about it when we open it, but we don't. We open the door and we go through it. The reality is that many door handles are designed so that they are levers. So individuals who have dexterity problems and that type of inability to use their hands for whatever reason, they've changed door handles to become levers so that they can be operated by different devices or by your elbow. And if you think about it, how many times have you opened a door with your elbow because your hands were full? Guess what? You just benefited by the transformation of that because of the disability community. Those little things are actually changing the world for everybody. So we have to stop thinking of it as, we're just helping one community versus the other. We're actually enriching and bettering the world for everybody. And we're really all benefiting. Just even like the cutouts on the curbs, when we walked down the street and there's a sidewalk, and let's say if you're wearing high heels, and Joel, I'm not talking about you. If you're wearing if you're wearing high heels, and as a woman, sometimes those curbs can be treacherous to navigate, but those cutouts that were designed to allow for wheelchairs to navigate have made it easier for some of us to navigate as well. And it had nothing to do with the one population versus the other. It really made the community as a whole, and that particular sidewalk that it might have been cut out from, better for everybody who's walking through that area. So I think, again, if we can start thinking broader, instead of what are we doing only to support the people with disabilities, we're really thinking in big terms of how can we make our community better for everybody living in it. And some people will benefit at some time, some people will benefit at others, but we're all going to be enriched by the process.
Thank you, Lisa. That's a great comment. And from a personal note, since I'm a little bit older, I now suffer from arthritis in both of my thumb areas, and getting in my front door, which I have not transitioned to a lever, is a challenge. So you're absolutely right. Some simple things like fingernail clippers where I have to press. So, you know, we look at all of these modifications to try and make our lives better. And that's an apt and important point. I'm going to transition to Gail for a second, but did anyone have a response that they wanted? Anyone have a burning they wanted to add before we continue on? Are we good to go? Okay, Gail, you're in a critical place in our community with 211, and you and your organization generally hears from people who are in some degree of crisis, in some degree of stress, but not everyone in that family is the immediate issue or challenge or problem. What does inclusion mean to the rest of the family, to the other children, to the Tommy who may not be have some sort of a neurodiverse situation?
You know, it would be hard to improve upon what Lisa said in any setting, but especially in this setting. But it really is, you know, inclusion is really just about providing equal access and opportunities and resources. Something that Lisa said when we were meeting is very, very important. She mentioned about those cutouts on curbs. And she said, you know what about people who are pushing a cart, or a baby carriage? And those were not initially meant for those folks, but guess what? No one says, well, I'm not going to use that because that was initially meant for somebody else. We all enjoy the benefits of it. And it's the same thing when you're talking about in a home. When you make adjustments for one, guess what? The relationships for all improve, because if you have and everybody on this panel or everybody participating, and folks will see this video later, you know, when you have children, perhaps one who is living with a disability and one who isn't, a lot of times you get that, well, and this has happened, this has been my personal experience, what I've seen, you know, I feel like maybe you're spending more time over here. But when I can engage with my sibling, then it's more of that unit where it can be, and this sounds terrible, but it's actually, it's appropriate development. It's more us against the parents and not me against y'all. It's like we have our own thing here. We're the siblings, we're the kids, and we can, you know, develop our own style and our own communication. And I can do things with you because I don't see you as being a problem. I just see you as being, oh, one sister has dark hair, one sister has red hair, one sister doesn't use her hands as much, one sister uses a special tray to move around. But it's about that complete acceptance, but more that it's not accepting like, oh my goodness, I have to accept you. It's okay, that's just different. And now we can move forward. Kids are so amazingly resilient when the parents are not the problem. You know, something that Damian said earlier was, you know, it's never the kids. You know, kids are they go by our example. And if you tell a kid, hey, you know what, Jim doesn't see very well. And so, you know, that's why they have those beeps on the sidewalk. Well, guess what? I have gone up to a sidewalk, I'm reading something or looking at my phone, which is silly, and I've heard the beep, which let me know, okay, the light is changing. Now, I'm not sight impaired, but that was a time that I was able to use that benefit. And it's the same thing in families and in schools. When you talk about children with special needs, yes, the benefits are extremely important for children with special needs to have that inclusion. But the children who don't have special needs get to learn the acceptance. They know that everybody has these unique abilities and they get to see the person first and not the disability. They learn empathy and diversity. When you speak to somebody who grew up in a very homogeneous neighborhood, everybody sort of looked like me, all the cookie cutter houses, all the families made about the same amount of money, you have a very limited view. But way you sort of get out of that is you broaden it by people who have different experiences. You know, we don't want to live and work and be around people who just look like us. I would have never tried, you know, dozens of food that I know now enjoy, and I use that. But I get that opportunity so that you can build these friendships, that you can have this common experience that's not just based on it's us against them, because that attitude carries on to adulthood. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Damian, I want to switch gears and ask you a specific question. So you're dealing with young people who are in a unique program, you know, in a secondary program, post-secondary program, and you're dealing with instructors that may or may not have sympathy, empathy, or understanding. What are you seeing in the adults, in the instructors, and how do you navigate that for those kids?
Well, thanks for the question. I'm not with the post-secondary, so I'm
sorry.
literally only dealing with, no, it's fine. I'm dealing with middle school and high school, but I do get a chance to train a lot of the new teachers and teachers that are there. And
I knew there was some way to get to the question. I just didn't know how to do it.
Hey, bald heads stick together. Anyway, one of the things that I have learned to do is that, you know, I come in and I get an opportunity to sit down and observe a teacher, whether they've been doing it for 30 years or 30 seconds. And I get an opportunity to assess what they're doing. And some of the things that I'm finding out is that a lot of our teachers are not being pliable to what's going on. It's what I said, it's all I said, and do what I say. And like, that doesn't work for my 8 and 7-year-old right now. So how are you going to make sure a whole classroom of teenagers or preteens do this very same thing? So one of the things that I'm teaching is that you actually have to be able to communicate and learn how each student communicates, regardless if they have a disability or not. You need to be a linguistic expert. If Jimmy, you can't yell at Jimmy. That information is whitewashed. So you have to speak a little bit softer to Jimmy. Sally, you can be a little bit more firm with Sally. It's the same when we have a student with disability. It's not because, okay, Jimmy has a disability, I need to speak softer. It is, what is the most effective way for me to teach this information so Jimmy can get it, regardless of the disability? And that is the thing. I think that we waste way too much time with labels, and we need to learn the individual. How can I get this individual to learn about this information? That is the major thing. So one of the things that once we, again, as your shirt says, Joel, remove the stigma, remove that there is, you know, I have to be a certain way. I was an ESE teacher. I was a VE teacher. I had a lot of the behavior kids, the EBD kids, for those that don't know, the emotional behavior disorder, young people. And they didn't like the word ESE. They hated it. So we changed it into our own area code, which is 353. And anybody that knows that digital numbers, that the 3 looks like an E and the 5 looks like an S. So that's what we did. We call, it's like, listen, we're on the West Wing, area code 353. Let's go. And that is what I did. I would go. Again, I was a high school football coach as well. So during my planning period outside of football, I would go to my other kids' classroom and check up on them. They will work for me. I will go into a classroom, a teacher, how do you get Christian, which is actually one of the kids' name, to do work? Because he has all F's and 1 C in your classroom. Well, I treat Christian like he's a human being. I don't talk at him, I speak with him. Do you understand where I'm coming from? Yes. Okay, Christian, you need to get the work done. Let's get to it. Let's come on. I know you can do it. Let's go. And that's what I do. I'm encouraging. I'm making sure that they understand I'm there for them. I'm not there because I'm getting a check, regardless of you if you're there or not. And that's that.
Thank you, Damian. Switching over to Lisa, and for those of you who don't know Lisa, the life experience and family experience she has helped her develop to be a remarkably empathic person and deals with a unique group of kids. So the same kind of question. How do we help the professionals deal with the population that you deal with to make sure that one, they're not ableist, and two, they're encouraging.
Thanks, Joel. I have to live up to that description of me now. So first of all, I want to start with a premise. So just to back up a second, as I introduced myself, I explained that in my role at FND, I work with families that have loved ones to the age of 26 with any type of complex medical condition or special healthcare need or developmental disability or mental health challenge. That's a lot. And that's a lot of different spectrums and disorders to really manage. And we're dealing with a lot of different systems of care in those worlds. But I want to start with this premise that at any time, we can become one of those individuals with a complex medical condition, a developmental disability, or a mental health challenge. The reality is that nobody's immune from that. And we have to think about that when we look at our children that have those types of challenges, because they can be, in many ways, they can change, they can morph, they can come and go, they can be chronic, they can be complex, they can be acute and disappear. And so we have to start with the premise that we are all actually vulnerable to that world. And so if we think in terms of those kids are no different than ourselves, as an adult, we at any time can have a crisis in our medical or mental health worlds, and that changes the dynamic. Instead of stigmatizing those children, the reality is it levels the playing field. We're all coming from the possibility of being in that community at some point in our lives. I will share with you, personally, I'm dealing with my young adult who has a concussion. I learned that over the weekend, and dealing with having to navigate what that looks like, a sudden emergency, a chronic problem, please God, no, but it could be if it's not dealt with correctly. So again, at any time, a child, an adult, a person can have a complex medical condition or a mental health challenge. With that said, we have to look at the opportunity of telling the professionals working with these kids, whether it's in the school environment or any system of care, that we need to look at opportunities for teachable moments with these kids. Not only for the individual who has that challenge, but everybody around them in that sphere in their world, because we learn from their experiences. They're going to guide the level of knowledge that we're going to gain in addition to what we want to learn on our own. So let's use these as teaching moments. If we have children, and especially in a classroom environment, that have complex medical conditions or mental health challenges, those teachers want to use those as opportunities for growth within that entire classroom. And we talked about, again, ableism doesn't have to be an isolated situation. Those kids that are without disabilities need to understand they too can have a disability at any time. So why don't we use this as an opportunity to build compassion and empathy and sensitivity and awareness of diversity in those environments? We also want for the professionals to use these as opportunities for growth. And I say this because I've taught in a classroom. I understand that teachers come with what I call book knowledge. We're all taught in our academic levels and our teaching certification courses that this is what we need to be doing at different grade levels and different ages and understanding the curriculum. But in reality, there are things that are not going to get taught in a school in the curriculum that teachers take. So let the teachers use their classrooms as opportunities to learn and grow themselves. Change the way you teach. Operate around the students you're working with. Use them as examples for your own personal growth, and then share that personal growth with the kids that you're engaged with. I mean, we have to understand that the kids, when they leave the school environment, are leaving the cocoon in many cases that they have been in for 12 years, and in many cases are leaving home to go to either secondary education or work, or maybe even live on their own. And if we don't allow that cocoon to break open and for them to taste the waters of the world around them and all the different experiences, we're doing them a disservice. Those classrooms are truly experiments that can be used to the advantage of every student and every individual in that environment. they really should be, those professionals in those classrooms really should be using that opportunity for growth, for their own personal enrichment, so they can enrich those kids' lives, but for helping to bring those other kids along from the experiences of the exceptional children in those classrooms.
Thank you, Lisa. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope your brain is on fire the same way mine is. I hope you're following in the chat. I know Allie's answering some questions and there's some content area. There's a few more questions that I'm going to pose to some specific members of the panel. And then we're going to kind of open it up to some general thoughts, questions, round robin, and give our panelists a chance before we finish to kind of put a bow on their thoughts. But please, if you have questions, put them in the chat so we can try and address them. You do, I think, have pretty much everyone's information. I know everyone who signed on as a panelist has been willing to follow up with responses to questions as well. Stacy, I've been told, and I can't validate it, I'm sure you can better than I can, that parents experience schools that make statements like, we can't include these children, this kind of child, or a child with this kind of a unique experience in a regular classroom because there's no money in the budget, or we don't have paraprofessionals. Is this acceptable?
No. Now, is it reality that these parents are faced with those kind of statements? Yes. I'm not supposed to hear those kind of messages, but that would be the number one call that my office gets. And we're pretty busy. And really, sadly, you could talk to almost every educational advocate out there, and we're all pretty busy. We wouldn't be busy if all the glorious things that we're talking about tonight were completely in place. So yeah, the number one response is typically, there's no money in the budget for that. Or the other one, like I said before, is, well, when he's ready. We really want to include him or her, but when they're ready, and it's not about that. But yes, but that is the reality. And we know coming down, hopefully we're moving out of COVID, that we're faced with some pretty significant challenges as a district and frankly, as a nation, when it comes to the shortage in teachers and paraprofessionals. And so we, as family members, I'm also a parent of a son who is a product of Broward County Schools who has a disability. And, we can understand when the school is faced by these challenges, but it should certainly not prevent us from advocating and speaking up for our children, knowing what is best. I mean, there's been tons of research that shows when school systems move to inclusion, and I'm not talking about we're going to include Johnny and Kevin and Susie and that kind of stuff. But when the system moves to inclusion and moves its dollars around to support inclusion, we actually end up saving money because a phenomenal amount of money is spent on segregation, special programs. Lots of money gets poured into special programs. But yes, it's certainly a financial challenge when you're running all these special programs. Oh, and we're going to do some inclusion. So it makes things a lot more challenging. But parents have rights, just like we heard Allie talking about before. IDEA, there are laws of the land that will support parents to get that least restricted environment for their child with a disability. And just to kind of piggyback, I think Lisa said a few minutes ago about, including kids with some complex needs. Some of my most successful outcomes, because I've been an advocate for 22 years, so I've seen kids come in and I've watched them graduate, have been kids with some pretty, when you look at them, you can kind of see it. Now you can't see the challenge in most of our kids with disabilities, but for some you can. And some of those kids where, you can see the disability, you can see the differences that they have. The best outcome kids are the kids who spent their education included. They're ready for the world because the world is not a segregated classroom. That's done. And businesses want to do one thing. They want to make money. And that's not creating some kind of special program over there. That's helping a business make money, and inclusion is how you get there.
You said something earlier, which is embedded in what you just said, but I think it's important enough to rephrase it or hear it again. And you said, none of what we're talking about here tonight is about if the child is ready. It's about the system being expected to be ready to serve that child.
Yeah.
I think I paraphrased you pretty effectively, but if I didn't, please fix it.
No, I mean, I'll talk about my son, for instance. I mean, he has autism. He had autism when he was diagnosed at 2.5 years old. And as long as he lives, that's going to be just part of who he is. It's not a bad thing. It's just who he is. He owns it. He's proud of the things that he has accomplished. He is our hero with no stretch of the imagination. He is an incredible human being. And I have no doubt that every person that was with him in school benefited by his presence being there, included. And, you know, when we prepare these young people for the world by being included, we do everybody a service in the long run.
Thank you very much. Jackie, if we could flip over to you. As of all the things that I've done in the district, I've never been part of ESE advisory. So please help us understand what role you play, you as an organization, not only the wonderful accent you have, but you know, for the non-ESE parents out there, how do we advocate? What does the role provide?
Yes, and I would love to see ESE advisory not just, and things like this, not just attended by folks with children with disabilities, but those without as well. Ali's got a great quote that she always comes up with about an encounter with a parent many years back when a parent was somewhat disparaging about her son, and Ali very coolly said about how I think your son has more to learn from my son than my son will ever learn from yours. I do think there's a lot to be learned from our disabilities community. It's a two-way thing. But yeah, for folks who aren't familiar with us, we're established by the school board. We're a parent-driven, parent-led volunteer body. When we say established by the school board, we run independently of them. We're not told what to do. We advocate to them or make recommendations to them to help shape the system. We're part of that process of continuous improvement. We act as a bridge between the ESE community and the school district. So we have that two-way flow of information. So not only is the district pushing out information to us, but we're feeding back information and feedback and flagging issues and making recommendations back in, feeding back in. So we're a voice for students with disabilities and their parents and caregivers. We have monthly meetings. We have 4 committees: autism, Down syndrome, emotional and behavioral disabilities, and dyslexia and specific learning disabilities. We always like to say you do not have to have a child with a disability to attend, or with a specific disability of that committee to attend. We all have a lot to teach each other. So, for example, we have presentations on strategies that actually Lisa did last night at our EBD committee, presentation on strategies for getting the most out of your parent-teacher conference and how to make those conferences awesome. Things that we've campaigned for include more and better training for school resource officers, so they do understand the behavioural differences of some students. For example, if you're interacting with a child with autism, for example, that they're not misreading behaviours. Advocacy on that led to some new and advanced training thanks to a partnership with Broward Sheriff's Office. We also represent on multiple different committees, and I think this is important. We have a place at the table on multiple committees of Broward schools, so Student Code of Conduct Committee, Facilities Task Force, District Advisory, Technology Advisory. So there's a constant voice for the ESE community in there. And I do love what Simone says about students. They are students first. It's all students first. But when there are unique needs to build in on top of that, we have to have a place at the table. And I'm pleased that the ESLS division is represented on a number of those committees, as is the parent voice. And I know, sorry, finally, we just got a lot of a sort of mix of audience here. So we might have people who are parents of kids with disabilities and folks who have nothing to do with the disabilities community and are here to learn as well. And I did just have a few tips. For example, how is your PTA or your PTSA generally reflecting its understanding of diversity and inclusion and ableism. Are field trips and sports and after schools clubs inclusive? Are students with disabilities excluded? Do they have equitable access? Are we using person first language? And I know some people have differing views on this, but not, you know, saying the ESE kids. I think that
Or the 353 kids.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and as we talked about before, do you have a best buddies group at your school? Do you have a peer mentoring program? If it's not a group, what is done to actually just infuse into the function and philosophy of the school and the culture of the school to be an inclusive environment? What is a disability? It doesn't have to be somebody who's coming up to you in a wheelchair or limping down the hallway with a brace on their leg. One of the thing that bugs the heck out of me is if people say, well, your child doesn't look disabled. Well, hello, most of them don't. You know, what do you want disabled to look like? So I know from, for example, for running book fairs, you know, you might have a child in there who's completely lost. They have dyslexia or some kind of learning disability, and they might just say to their friend or to a helper at the book fair, hey, what does this say? Or what's that book called? And they get laughed at. Or, you know, an adult might say to them, you can't read that. You know, always have in mind that there might be that hidden disability behind the child. And there are so many good points to make here, but another one that was in the chat box, which I really do want to flag. If one school does inclusion well, they all should, and they should. It shouldn't be piecemeal. There needs to be some humility to the system, whereby if you've got one school that's doing great at it and another that isn't, learn from them. Make that other school come up to that standard and reach that bar. Don't just say, well, it's up to them and site-based management. We want a system for all, not just a sort of lottery where you might, you know, if your school's good at it, then great, and if not, you're doomed. There needs to be some learning off of one another. And finally, just Debbie, you talked about putting more faith sometimes in our own kids' abilities. And I have to share a story of this morning. I drove my kid to school and he announced about 10 seconds before I dropped him off in Carline, oh, I haven't got my ID pass. And I know how serious an offense that is these days. And so I looked like that, you know, Edvard Munch's The Scream, you know, like, ooh, what are we going to do? And I said, we go to the office. I thought, shall I drive him home and we'll get it and be late? Or shall I send him to the office, but I'm not allowed to go in and there's nowhere to park, I'm in Carline and he won't be able to do it. So I pushed him out the car, told him to go to the office, and I was texting him, have you got your pass? Have you got your pass? Are you okay? Do you need me to call the school? And he's like, no, I've got it. I'm in class. So I had really totally underestimated him. He's just made that big leap from middle to high. It's a huge leap. And he's gone from a tiny school to, you know, being a very small fish in a big ocean. And I think you're very right. Sometimes parents might project an issue onto a child that actually isn't there and that kids are doing great at. But yeah, we've, you know, there's so much more improvement to do. And if we could all just bring schools all up to meeting a very high bar and learning off each other, that would be wonderful.
Wow. I'm getting a visual of you trying to push him out of the car.
Well, sort of, I pushed him with my brain, you know. Just,
gotcha.
Joel, if
Yeah.
I could just jump in, Jackie, you made a really important statement that I just want to jump off of. You said we need to raise the bar. The reality is that bar is supposed to be equal for all of us. And if the bar needs to be lowered to accommodate the individuals who are not getting their needs met first, let's get them on the bar and then raise the bar. And I'm concerned that if we raise the bar quickly and we don't do the necessary work to get that bar up high, we're going to leave people behind.
Okay. And by the way, I just got a text from probably all of our friend Bob Mayerson about a site, michaelsweller.wordpress.com. If you shovel the ramp, we can all get in, which is a comment kind of that Lisa made earlier. So at least we know Bob's paying attention to our conversation. So we have a little bit of time left, and I think we've painted the picture created the drawing of inclusion and the positive things that as a community and as a district we're trying to do, and then the miles we continue to have to go. We started this conversation by having Allie share with us, and we framed it with a conversation about what ableism is. And so I'd like to, pose to the panel, and anyone can jump in either as a result of something you've heard tonight or what your belief system is, or we've left something out. What do you want to share about your understanding of ableism? Allie, you've been quiet.
You know what a challenge that is for me.
I know.
So I am a dyed in the wool, born 1969, hardcore Gen Xer, right? I love my Facebook, but I found TikTok recently, and I'm staying off the disability world of TikTok, but I have found neurodivergent TikTok, which I absolutely love. And Connor DeWolf, look him up. He is amazing. However, there's another woman. She's a creator. She's a wheelchair user. And she was so sick and tired of people pushing her without asking her that she designed spikes, like your 1970s, Sid Vicious spikes on her wheelchair. So people wouldn't
Jackie,
do
the
that.
crowd may not know who Sid Vicious is. Be careful.
Well, you look them up. There's Google. But,
I'm old enough, don't worry.
my own version of ableism that really I learned as a parent for myself, and I think Debbie said it and Jackie said it and Lisa said it. I want to paint a visual for you guys, okay? My boy is 6'5". He is 280 pounds, and he has a Jamaican father. So he is this very tall, very big, light brown boy that had very bad impulse control issues. Very, very bad. We're talking room clears, Baker Acts, attempted arrests. And that's why I'm here. That's why I have this story to share and to help and empower other people. So I found myself experiencing ableism by going, oh, I really like how you did that. I would like all those skills, all those strategies that they teach you or whatever. And it literally about 6 months ago, he goes, Ma, you don't have to tell me that I'm doing it right. I'm okay. You don't have to give. So scaffolding back also and being aware of our own biases that we are bringing to the table. And ableism is a big thing to unpack, and inclusion should not still be the conversation. Like, I have a whole lot of words about that one. We were really hoping for more leaders and parents of children that do not have disabilities. So I do have a call of action. I do have a request. Once this is out on the PTA website, and Bert has put that out, and watch our Facebook pages, we will share that. Send the link to 5 or 10 different people. Send it to your principal, send it to your county commissioner, send it to the county mayor, because our children are general education students first, and they are citizens first, and they deserve to be sitting at every single table, and they shouldn't have to bring their own chair like their predecessors have. So that's my thoughts for you, Joel.
Thank you. And I think that's beautiful. And I think as we're starting to wind down, I'm going to just kind of, again, do another round robin and make sure that all the panel gets a chance to chime in before we close it out. So Damian, let's go to you, Mr. 353.
All day, every day. I'm getting a shirt made and a bumper sticker. Anyway, I want to say that, first of all, this was an amazing panel, and I want to really thank all the guests that chimed in. They had some awesome comments to be made. But I would say this, is that I had an opportunity a couple of years ago to present and train at Family Cafe. And if you guys have never had the opportunity to go to that particular event, they do it every year. It is absolutely amazing. And I had my then 7 and 6-year-old, I believe, and 7 and 5-year-old son and my daughter.
Do you need help remembering how old your kids are?
Well, this was 2 years ago, and they're literally like 13 months apart. So I have to make sure I do the math.
All right, okay.
But in any event, I had an opportunity because my kids really did not know what I do. They just know me as a football coach, which I've coached sports for 22 years. And one of the things that it gave me an opportunity is to actually use this particular event as a teaching moment. My daughter, who's very inquisitive, who asked a million questions before 7 o'clock in the morning. And she asked, Dad, what's wrong? What's wrong with that person? And why are they acting like that? And it gives me an opportunity to teach them, listen, regardless of what you see, they're a person, treat them as such. Give them an opportunity to let them know about accountability for being, someone that may not have a disability, but they're still your friend. They're still able to, to do things just like you can. They just do things differently. My son, who would go up to anyone and introduce himself and say hi, and legitimately had a young boy who was in a wheelchair. I think he actually he had a walker, and he spent legitimately 30 seconds with him and saw the kid again later on. It's like, Dad, I want to go talk to my friend. It was like, your friends now? That was 30 seconds. What just happened? My thing is to say this. First thing, teach your kids, regardless, just to be a person, a human. How about that? We're going to start with that. That's brass tacks. The other part is, as a football coach, I didn't realize until I actually got into the realm of ESE, is that a lot of my athletes were ESE. And I didn't realize why I had to say something 1,001 times to go to the left, and he kept going to the right. And it's like, what are you doing? And it wasn't until I started seeing them in support facilitation and understanding that they needed accommodations and had all of these other strategies. It's like, I understand now. So when I went to another school, I realized I had to differentiate my instructions amongst this affluent school that did not have the most robust ESE population. As a matter of fact, I don't remember them having any. But I had learned that I had to differentiate my instruction the same way I would do in my ESE classroom, that I had to do it on the football field. So I just say, be pliable and teach everybody, just be a human and love one another and respect one another. We're going to make it. I promise you.
Thank you, Damian. Let's go to Simone, please.
Thanks, Joel. And Damian, well said. Certainly, I think if we think about what we need to do for every individual in regards to having respect for others, if we start with respect for others, I believe that that's where we start with humanity, humility, and grace and elegance. And I think that we've been through a lot in the last 2 years. I guess it's 2 years. I can't even keep track. That has been unprecedented. And certainly that's not just for us for Broward County, but certainly as a nation and as a country. And again, I go back to truly respect. And if we look at each individual as what they bring as ability, what they bring as difference as a positivity, and less about what is a holdback, I think that provides all of us the opportunity to accept and really truly appreciate difference in any fashion. So I think that's something to me that I take away from this and try to impart each day as a person, not necessarily just as an educator or in my role at the Broward County Public School System, but as a person, and hope to impart that on individuals that I come in contact with each and every day. And I've always used to say, we have the opportunity to make a positive impact each and every day and really truly make an influence, not power and not about change, not about making things happen, but truly that influence and that positive impact. Thanks, Joel.
Thank you so much, Simone. Gail, any comment?
I'm going to interrupt Gail because we're sisters from other misters. Don't forget there's a giveaway. Don't
There
forget.
is. Oh, yes. So people stay on because there's a giveaway. And if you, as a Baptist minister would say, don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle. So do not leave yet. There is definitely a giveaway. I would definitely say, something I learned when I was in school, and my professor said, if you first thing you have to do before you start seeing clients is know and recognize your bias. And as a parent, if you don't recognize your bias, if you don't recognize that you are doing subtle gestures, the pull-aways, the don't looks, the don't stare, the don't talk to, the don't get in the elevator with, whatever that person might look like, you are screaming to your kid, far more lessons than what you say is, oh, you know, we're all equal. But you pull them away from somebody who looks different. You're saying, no, that's something we need to stay away from. So please recognize your bias and, you know, get involved in something that doesn't necessarily look or feel just like you. If you don't have children that are in, please contact Jackie, get involved. If for instance, I remember taking a French club in school, and a French and chess club. And I did not learn any French, and I cannot play chess, but I met some really neat people. And if you can get outside that comfort zone of what is just normal and regular for you, you can really, really find yourselves in some remarkable situations with people. You know, just remember, it's not, we all are, you know, I don't know if anybody read Animal Farm years ago when they were making us read that in school. They say, you know, we're all created equal. Some are more equal than others. And the fact is it's not that. It's just that there are some equality comes at different levels. And so when we decide that we're going to improve something, because I need to give somebody else 4 steps and I only need 2 steps, that doesn't mean that they're getting more than me. That's saying that let's get here on a more equal basis and recognize that you're standing at a little bit of a higher level. And so what we need to do is just don't pretend that doesn't exist. Every time you walk into a store and you have to take a step up, that's ableism. And I didn't recognize that until I was caring for my mom who was in a wheelchair. And it was like, you know, at some point you go in this, when we were all going out, you know, you go into a store, take that step up. Guess what? That's ableism. That is the ability you have to take a step up and it doesn't bother you. You don't have to think about it. And that's what it is. The moment, you know, you go into a restaurant, I read about it and I was like, wow, I have never seen it. And there was one restaurant I've ever been to that had a Braille menu. So think about it. Every time that person goes in, they have to ask an adult, whoever they are, has to ask another person to read this for me. And they can't just sort of navigate life. And that's it. We just want people to move beyond that idea that your way is the absolute only way ever, because when we rise the tide, we all rise up. And that's my little, you know.
Thank you. I'm going to continue around. We are running out of time, and I want to make sure we get to the giveaways. But let's go to Lisa.
So I'll be short. I just wanted to say.
You are short.
Thanks. You're right, actually. The truth is that none of us is better than another person. It doesn't matter if we're fully abled, fully bodied, have all our parts, all our minds. It doesn't matter. Nobody is better than anyone else. We need to learn about treating our neighbor as ourselves, as we would want ourselves to be treated. And that's where everything should stem. If we start looking at people as if we were in their shoes and start to put this in perspective, things like these barriers that we talk about will start to come down. But it really is on all of us. Those of us who don't understand the challenges of living in the disability world, it's on us to break the barriers, not for them to create the scenarios they need. And I congratulate all of us, because the work we do is hard, and continue to have strength and courage in the work that we all do. And I applaud all of you for a wonderful presentation tonight.
Barbara.
Thanks, Joel. This really has been such a great evening, hearing from everyone and your comments and sharing great information. I think the only thing I want to remind folks of is that the first week in December is Inclusive Schools Week. And I'm not a real fan of, you know, wow, 1 week to celebrate something, but it does kind of put a focus on what our schools can do to celebrate good practices that they have, or start a good practice and celebrate it. We provide a lot of resources to our schools with videos and activity guides to kind of help just what Lisa was saying about being mindful of that perspective and shaping perspectives to see through someone else's point of view. The conversation about ableism and looking at our actions and our words and how we may not mean to harm someone, but we may be underestimating our neighbors, our peers, and we shouldn't do that. So the world of advancing our inclusive practices and being more mindful of the strengths that are in each and every one of us is so important. So first week of December, Inclusive Schools Week.
Thank you, Barb. Jackie, any final comments?
Yeah, I just want to say a word about parent power again, because parents are change makers. And I think parents of kids with disabilities would love to be joined by parents of kids without, who we want folks to understand our kids and get our kids and help lobby for our kids and their kids and all kids. I do think as well, we need to iron out this attitude that it's us against the world. It isn't. It's a big world out there. There's lots of people still also doing a lot of good for our kids. I don't think they get as much acknowledgement because, as always, when we complain, the complaints are louder than the plaudits. And I do feel sometimes that becomes very imbalanced. We need to acknowledge the successes as well, call out the failures, but you know, you lose your platform if all you do is say that everything's a failure. And really change doesn't happen overnight, but inch by inch, you know, we want to turn it beyond just inch by inch. And I always have been inspired by a quote from Dan Gold, the Chief Academic Officer of Broward Schools, who once at some talk or other, he was making a speech and he said, "Be persistent, be polite, be patient, but don't be patient forever." And I think nobody should be patient forever.
Thank you. That's quite an effective mic drop. Stacy?
I think that tonight was really great. And for all the teachers out there, the general education teachers that are out there, I know it can be scary to take this on, but there's reason for inclusion. It's not just because we as parents think that it's something really nice to do for our kids. Far from that. We don't want sympathy. We don't want you to pat our kids on the heads. But we know, first of all, you know, it's their right, according to the laws that we have, but also it gives all kids, not just these kids that are in your class, but it gives all kids higher test scores. It makes you a better teacher. It makes you a more rounded individual to be able to teach all students. And for the parents who are out there, again, it gives your kids higher test scores. Doesn't mean they're going to pass an FSA, but who really cares about FSA? But making meaningful progress, those are the kids who make meaningful progress. They make friends. They have a higher percentage of kids who are included have friends. How many of you guys are like dying for your kids to have friends? They have role models for communication that they're surrounded by all day. So they're hearing other little people talk all day long, and they're able to develop their skills because little Susie's coming over to them, asking them what they want to do and where they want to go play. And so we have those role models. And a big one is that we have a much less degree of incarceration later on in life by children who are included when they're in school. And the number one thing that I think is really important for everybody to know, in case you don't know, because I actually had a school tell me that, you know, that she didn't think it was, it's a civil right. We're talking about civil rights. It is a civil right for our children to be included, and then for them to grow up to also be included and not segregated away in a classroom or a sheltered workshop. And I think that it's really important for us to think about that, because most Americans understand what we mean when we say civil rights. And that is the importance of inclusion. It is to the level of it being a civil right.
Thank you. And certainly not least, Debbie and Son.
Yes, Corey just got home. He's wondering why it's blurry and no one can see him. Just again, want to thank everyone so much. This was a great conversation. And I want to reiterate what I said earlier. Different doesn't mean broken or bad. It just means different. And that is really so important. We're all different. We all have our own idiosyncrasies. We all have our ways that we like our routines and get flipped out when it doesn't go the way it's supposed to. So, you know, it's really important that we continue to look at our students as just different across the board. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with them. And just want to reiterate that we have to give all of our students the tools they need to advocate for themselves, from the decisions at home, what shoes they want to wear, or whether they're going to brush their teeth or not, even though their teeth may fall out. You know, it's a struggle that I've had and people continually remind me. So I just want to say, I believe that's really important. But again, thank you so much for the opportunity to tell you my stories tonight and to be part of this fantastic town hall.
So I want to thank this amazing panel for burning my brain to a great degree. I'm honored to have learned from you all, and I am overwhelmed by the passion you bring to this work and am inspired by it. I certainly want to recognize the whole panel, but Allie for herding us as if we were kittens, trying to keep us in order. And with that, I am honored and delighted to turn it back over to Bert Miller, our PTSA president.
Mr. President, can I have just a moment of
Go
privilege?
ahead, Alan.
I think this is really important, you guys, because those of you that know me, you know me. And my son went from a self-contained EBD school, okay? It was 5 years old through 22, all on one campus, all alike. You could not get more segregated unless it was residential. And he only had 6 months in elementary school included, which I had to fight for very, very hard. And then he went to 6th grade. And on his first day of 6th grade, he met Tyler. And those two boys are 22 years old, and they are still best friends. You don't know what impact it is going to have. Don't put roadblocks in there that don't need to be in there. And I like what you said a lot, Jackie, about we definitely have to be persistent and talk about what's wrong, but recognize the good too. So thank you for that moment of privilege, Mr. President, and I will let you do the raffles because that's out of my scope of understanding.
Thank you, Allie. I want to thank the entire members that were here tonight. You guys did a fantastic job. And, you know, and my motto when I became president, my slogan is building strong, diverse communities through unity. And this is part of that. What you guys did here tonight is part of that. So I really appreciate it. And I know we have some PTAs on here from Volusia County. We have some on from Alachua County. There's some Broward County people on here. So there are some PTAs on here. So I want all of you guys to take it back to your PTAs, to your families, and share this with them. The video will be posted on our YouTube channel, and I'll send a link out to Allie, and she can send it out to everybody as soon as I get it downloaded and uploaded to YouTube. So with that, I just heard from Papa John's was on in the beginning and heard some of it. So I had reached out to her and asked her for a donation, and she just sent me an email about an hour ago saying that she's going to give us 10 pizzas to give away. So I want to thank Papa John's for doing that. So we're going to get started. I've got, let's see, we have 46 people on now. Well, I got 47 names, so we might have one name that's not here. Let me see, let me spin the wheel. Number 17, Fabiola Ana Torres Chalafor. Is she here? You got to say something if you're here, otherwise we're going to move on.
I think they can unmute themselves, right, Bert?
Yep, they can.
She was in the chat box only a short minute ago.
I see the name here, but I don't know if she's here or not.
She deserves it. Give it to her anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. She was on mute, Bert. I don't know if she.
Okay. Let me put the pizza by her. Okay, next pizza. Number 38. Number 38 is Stacy Hoagland.
Yeah, she's a panelist.
It's okay.
Yay!
Lacey Hoagland. So what happens is I send them your email and then they'll send you a voucher. Number 11, Cynthia Lassiter.
She's here.
Okay.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you.
I guess I have my role again, Bert, huh? I'm checking the chat, the chat box for you.
Number
I mean, the
30. Guess that, Lisa. Lisa Math.
No, seriously?
Yep.
Oh, no, I'll donate it back. I can't have pizza in my house, unfortunately. I have celiac disease.
Okay.
Of all things for me to win, I can't even eat it.
34, Piper Weber.
She was here. Piper, say hi. You're on mute.
Number 18, Alyssa Katzman.
Alyssa? I don't see Alyssa here.
She's not here.
How do you spell that?
Alisa.
No. Alyssa, if you're here, say hi, but I don't see her on the participant
Okay,
list.
she's probably the one that I missed,
Mm.
that I couldn't find. Number 1, Alida Iona.
She's here.
Yes, thank you. Thank
You're
you. Thank you. I'm
welcome.
excited. Thank you.
Okay. Number 6, Ashley Adams.
She's here.
I'm here. Thank you.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Congratulations, Ashley.
Piper said she cannot accept the pizza.
25, Jasmine Clements.
No, Jasmine.
Okay,
She's
so
here.
Piper Weber said she can't accept it.
Thank you.
Jasmine's here.
I'll take it. Thank you.
All right, Piper can't take it, you said?
Piper says she in the chat, Piper said she can't take it.
Okay.
Well, I think I'll be going out for pizza. I'm starving, y'all.
Number 21, Genesis. I don't even want to pronounce Lape.
Spell the first name, Bert. Spell the first name.
Genese.
I don't see that name on the participant list.
Okay, it must have dropped off. Number 2, Allison Bregman.
She's here.
Yay!
Got
it. Thank you.
8, we have 2 more pizzas. Number 36, Rachel Baker.
She's here.
Oh,
Rachel
could I
said-
donate my pizza to a family? Is there a family on that would enjoy a pizza a night that they don't have to cook?
Well, do you know a family that you can donate it to?
I do, but I just wondered if there was someone on tonight that was a family that liked pizza.
I don't
All
know.
right. If not, I'll take it and donate it.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
Soren Richardson.
She's here.
Okay, 3, 4.
You want pizza? Say hi.
Okay, that's all the pizzas. Now we have 2 gift baskets. 35. Rachel Baker Blackwell? Or no,
Oh,
you got the,
she already won.
no, Melissa Ramos.
She's here.
She here?
Thank
The
you.
baskets-
How
the
are you?
Baskets are donated by the ESE committee and the mental health committee.
Aw, that's so sweet.
What was the name again? I lost the name.
Melissa Ramos.
Oh, there it is right there. I'm skipping right over it. Basket, there we go. Joel, do you want a gift basket?
You're on mute, Joel.
You're muted. For once, you're muted.
Amazing,
You're
right?
muted.
Shocking. I would like to donate my gift basket to a member of the audience,
Okay, so you want me to do it again, spin again?
please.
Thea Chin? Thea Chin?
Yep.
There she is.
Okay, that's the 2 gift baskets. Now we have 2 $25 Target cards.
Thanks. Thanks. Thanks.
Stacy Tremont?
She's here.
Stacy here?
Yes. Stacy, you're on mute if you're saying hi. She said thank you in the chat box.
Okay, we got one more $25 gift card. Stephanie Acosta Castro?
She's here.
I'm actually here as part of the ESLS support staff, so feel free to raffle it off to a family.
You want to redo it again?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
Bert, I'm gonna interrupt you real quick. Sorry, I'm gonna say goodnight. I have to give Corey a shower. So,
Okay,
thank
Deb.
you again so much, and I will see you all again soon.
Good
Thank you,
night.
Debbie.
Diane Egan.
She's
she
here.
here?
Yes, she is.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. I'd love to donate it to a family. Thank you.
You want to donate it back?
Yep.
That was nice of you. Stacy Wolf?
She's here.
Hi, thank you. I am also here with the Exceptional Student Learning Support Team, but I am going to take this gift card because I do have a student that needs clothing for work.
Aww.
Perfect.
And
So
Stacy
I
does
will take-
Well
fabulous work.
done.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And Stacy, just so you know, we have a clothing bank at Lauderdale Manors and at Apollo Middle with free uniforms and stuff for kids that need it. So just have them go to the guidance counselor. They have the forms and they just got to bring the form down and we'll give them free uniforms.
Perfect. I really
Okay.
appreciate that. I do have a few students that need some things, so that would be
Okay,
great.
all the guidance counselors have the forms. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Bert.
You're welcome. So that's it for our giveaway. So thank you everybody for attending. I don't know if you have anything, final thoughts you want to say, Allie. You did a great job. I know you're tired. Thank you. Thank you for
Gonna go
what
get some
you did.
chicken parmesan and some sleep. And I'm very appreciative of our community, but I'm gonna hold you to, once this is posted, sharing it, because it was really great for the 50 of us, but I'd rather 500 know, because guess what? We've got 240,000 students in this school system. That's 500,000 parents. That's 1 million grandparents. There's a lot we can do with one little video and 50 people, you guys. I love you all very much. You have become my village and my family, and thank you for being here.
We did
Well
have
said, Allie. Thank
we
you.
did have 110 people register, Allie. So about half came.
That's a good percentage.
Yep.
Mhm.
So thank you all. Have a great night. Go get something.
Thank
to
you.
eat.
Great job, everybody.
Great job,
Great
everyone. Well
job.
done,
Night.
Ali.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Bert. Thanks,
you.